to The Fair Fight with Alvaro and Max. I'm Max Miller, a antitrust attorney, a prairie populist, a corporate skeptic, and with me as always is former FTC Commissioner Alvaro Bedoya.
Hey, good morning, Max. Excited to talk about the flaming, toxic hurricane that is Live Nation Ticketmaster, but we are probably makes sense to say a word or two about the show that Max and I are building. We have a lot of shows out there that look at things in terms of left versus right, in terms of Democrats versus Republicans. Our show, the one that Max and I are building, looks at it in terms of the money at the top versus all of us underneath. And we think that should be a fair fight. Hence the name, The Fair Fight with Alvaro and Max. So today we will be talking, doing one of our lives, which we've been doing every Friday at drive time, 8:45 Eastern, 7:45 Central. But in the background, one thing we've been working on, folks, as many of you have seen, is cutting what we call car talk episodes or Q&A episodes with experts, where we try to get your questions answered about different problems you have in the economy. So, for example, at this stage, Max, I think we've cut 4, right?
We've cut 4 episodes. Well, not cut. We've recorded 4.
I'm just trying to be
and
fancy
I'm in the
use
process
lingo.
of cutting them for public view.
We've recorded. So yesterday
it's hard to transfer from the law to video editing, but you and I have a mutual friend who told me, it's like, hey, video editing is now the new writing, right? It's the new way that you convey. So I'm working on it, folks.
It's hard for me to hear, man.
I don't want it to be a steaming. I don't want it to be a steaming pile, so I'm working on it, but we'll try to get those out in the near future.
All right. Well, so folks know the episodes we've been recording. We had an episode recorded with Jennifer Abruzzo, probably the nation's leading labor lawyer, served as general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board, about what your rights are at work against the use of AI to try to replace you, against workplace surveillance. We cut an episode with pediatrician Jenny Radesky. Dr. Radesky of the University of Michigan is, I think, the country's leading expert on the use of smartphones and chatbots and social media by our kids and teens, and what we as parents can do to protect them. We cut an episode with 2 dear friends of ours, Basil Musharabash and Josh Mansky, about American agriculture, what is happening to farmers, why it is that farmers are going bankrupt, while the prices you see at the grocery store are just going up, up, up. What is the missing piece there? Turns out the piece is billionaire middlemen, some of whom are headquartered in Brazil. And lastly, last night, we recorded an episode with the one and only Cory Doctorow, science fiction author, digital rights activist, and shitster extraordinaire. And excited about that episode. Had a really good conversation about how labor should confront AI. Cory, like me, like you, Max, sees that the strongest bulwark against the expansion of AI is going to be labor, is going to be organized labor, is going to be workers uniting to push back. So we're super excited about that. But today we are turning to a different complete and utter disaster.
Well, Alvaro, this is a market that is near and dear to my heart.
Yes.
I have been a music fan my whole life. I love live concerts. I have been to, if I had to estimate, I'd say probably around 100 to 125 concerts.
Is that right?
In my live, yes, yeah, I'm a big fan. So this is a sad week for music fans. Because over the last 20 years, ticket prices have been going up like crazy. Clearly, the responsibility for it lies with Ticketmaster, which was acquired by Live Nation in 2010. And states and the federal government have tried to address this issue time and time again. And this is just the latest failure of government. But because we're going to be talking about concerts, Alvaro.
And terrible things with concerts.
Yes. Do you have any good concert stories to share with everybody?
All right. So as I've gotten older, I've absolutely become a homebody. But when I was younger, I did like going to concerts. I'm not like Seema, my wife, who's basically seen pretty much every major performer, especially in the 90s when she lived in Kenner in New Orleans, or next to New Orleans. So my best I have a best concert and concert I wished I'd gone to. So best concert was, I was in law school. A buddy of mine dropped out, and had a job that gave him a good amount of money, and he was able to get me and all of our friends tickets to see Arcade Fire live.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was awesome. It was completely awesome. But Max, the great one that never was I never saw Rage Against the Machine live. Did you see Rage live?
No, I haven't. It's one of my bucket lists though.
Oh my gosh. So I was so obsessed. So like I was as nerdy in high school as I am now, but I don't know what it was about that first album. The eponymous Rage Against the Machine album with Bomb Track and Killing in the Name of. I just got obsessed, Max. So I knew every single word off that album. I knew every single word off of Evil Empire. And me, Colin
to be fair,
Murchie,
Killing in the Name of doesn't have that many lyrics to it. So
it doesn't, but they're all just
I've done
bangers.
It in karaoke before, you know.
You have, wow, that's an aggressive karaoke, but the thing I will share is the other opportunity that never was me, my buddy Colin Murchie, Tim Kearns, and my lifelong friend Gabe Lander. We tried out for the Vestal High School Talent Fest with the String Quartet of Doom, which I would be, I don't know, performing, rapping Rage Against the Machine in front of. We tried out. Maybe somewhere there's a recording of our audition to perform Rage Against the Machine with a string quartet. We utterly bombed, and we did not make it into Talent Fest. So that was I didn't get to see Rage live, didn't get to perform Rage Against the String Quartet. And so that's why it turned out the way I did, Max.
Did I ever tell you that I was in kind of a band in law school?
I think you did, but remind me.
Well, I was part of the Law Review show, which is essentially
Law Review. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously Law Review is a serious for academics writing articles and doing all that fun stuff. But what I did was REVUE, where we rewrite popular songs. We make them, we made them be relevant to like the law school experience. So it was a lot of fun, but we had this great band. Like, we had a couple of pieces. In fact, shoot, I'm forgetting names now. I was like, never mind. I'll forget that.
Just make up names, man.
Yeah, it was Elliot Ash.
Frank.
Sorry. Elliot Ash was our drummer, and he actually writes a lot about antitrust. So
really,
it's funny. He's over in Europe, like in Austria, but he did that. He did an excellent article that was about how the Manny. What's that guy's name? The one
Jeffrey Manny.
Jeffrey Manny. Yeah. So
okay.
Henry Manny was Jeffrey Manny's father. And he organized all of these like enforcer trainings, like where they teach economics to enforcers.
Right.
And so my buddy
hotel where every meal is paid for.
There's a New York Times article called "The Education of Elizabeth Warren" that talks a little bit about that. But anyway, Elliot Ash was the drummer in this band that I was, a part of in law school, and he went on to do a study of how attending those trainings pushed judges to the right on like antitrust. It made like basically was pro-corporate judicial opinions followed. And so anyway, what we did was we would go play at a bar, right? Like we would put the band together. And so I actually got to have the experience of being like a front man and like singing on stage. And one of my
what
best
did you perform?
memories. Well, we performed, like, I remember a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers, like that kind of music. One that I really liked doing was House of the Rising Sun. Because that's kind of like perfect for my voice, and like especially you start screaming and it's
the rising sun. Is that the one?
It's like there is a house in New Orleans. Yeah, there you go. That's a little treat for everybody. I need to stop shaking my desk here. But concert wise, so this might surprise some people. I am a huge fan of a band called Gogol Bordello. Gogol Bordello is gypsy punk music. It's like Eastern European sounds, like with punk music. I've seen them about 20 times live that I've gone to their concert, and the best concert that I ever went to, it was a week before my eldest child was born. I was living over in London.
Well done.
And I went to Derby, England. And it was a festival in Derby, England. And I went specifically to see Gogol Bordello perform. And I was used to being in the mosh pits and, jumping around and being all crazy. But what was amazing about that experience was it was a festival. So there are all these bands and actually catching Corn, who I had no interest in.
Korn.
Korn.
Yeah.
Catching them perform. That was just one of like the coolest concert experiences I ever had. And then after the Corn concert, I was able to roll into the Gogo Bordello concert. And I used to live in Chicago. So I used to go to
You love mosh pits, right? You're like a big mosh pit guy. Yeah. Were you in the pit or were you the guy at the side who's like this?
As I got older, I transitioned to being the protector.
The protector.
Because when I was younger, like in my early 20s and all of that, like I definitely was out there, bouncing around and knocking into people. But as I got older and bigger, I realized that, it was better to kind of be the one pushing them back so that they don't like get into the people who just want to enjoy the show. You still got to be like right down front, like with the band. But so anyway, love concerts. And so it's saddened me.
Hate Live Nation Ticketmaster.
I hate, with a passion, I hate Live Nation as a monopoly, because that's exactly what they are. And they're not just a monopoly in one market. They have essentially combined monopolies in different markets in order to control the entire live ticketing experience.
Yeah. Let me jump in very quick before you dive in to give Max's background in this. So Max is very modest, and I recognize, as we were trying to tell folks about the show, well, you're modest about this, that Max represented the state of Iowa in 2019 when Live Nation Ticketmaster, allegedly, according to the states, violated the various agreements. I guess I'm in FTC mode. I don't need to say allegedly.
I'm like,
that's right. When Ticketmaster and Live Nation repeatedly violated the various agreements they made in 2010, and Max is going to talk about what those agreements were. But this, you're hearing this. I'm learning this from a guy who represented the people of Iowa against Live Nation Ticketmaster when it just kept on reneging on the promises it had made to protect people back in 2010 when Ticketmaster and Live Nation merged. So let me pass it back to you, Max. I'm here to learn. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and I'm extremely angry about these hot dogs at the end. But take it away, bud.
Yeah, and we got lots to cover. We'll try to keep it to an hour and 15 minutes. But and I just want to do a general disclaimer here. Like, I'm not going to be revealing any confidential information or anything related to my experience in 2018 and 19 with Live Nation Ticketmaster. I'm going to talk in very general terms. But first off, everybody should understand that this has been a problem that's been coming since the 1960s and 70s. It goes back that far, like really, because the idea of like the national tour of a concert or a band, like that kind of emerged with like rock and roll. The draw of rock and roll was really what started to get people in the idea of going and being with a bunch of other people and watching a band live. And back in the day, bands would use the concerts not to make money, really, right? But to just promote their album. The album was the way that they would make money.
Right.
But as bands started doing these like national tours, right, they didn't know the local markets, right? They didn't have relationships with the venues. So they developed this market for something called the concert promoter. Okay. There was a guy out in San Francisco who really kind of revolutionized like the idea. His name was Bill Graham, and he had a company called Bill Graham Presents. He started.
No relation to the Graham evangelical family or Lindsey Graham.
No, well, gosh,
the latter of whom
he was a German Jewish immigrant.
Oh, interesting.
And I think his family, got out of Germany, of course, because of World War II.
Okay.
And so. But he, and to be honest, I can't remember exactly, but I don't even know if that's his real name. Like it might have been like.
It was Ellis Islanded. Yeah.
Yeah. Just it was a name that he adopted. But these promoters were kind of shady, right? And I don't know the specifics of, individual promoters like Bill Graham or whatever, but it was generally the bands were very like distrustful of the promoters, and because the promoters would basically bring the venues and the bands together, right? They would negotiate and they would do the marketing for the tour. So they would have contracts with like local radio stations to get people interested in the idea that this particular band was coming to your area. So there's a lot of connection between promotions and radio, which is important for the development of the company Live Nation. But like one of the things that these promoters would do, right, is they would like double sell tickets. Like, so the band would know that, okay, this seats 1,000 people, right? This theater. But really the promoter is selling like 1,200 tickets, right? And giving them out, because what they think they would do is double ticketing, where they would sell a ticket, it would be taken in, and then they would sell it at the box office again. So they would be violating fire codes. But what they could do then was hide revenue from the band. So the band, and so the bands were actually very much like, you know, we got to have these contracts with these promoters, we got to have contracts with the venue, but ticketing is like the source of our income. And it's amazing to me how much antitrust, like whenever one industry starts being abusive, like it causes other industries to be abusive. Because like I told you about how for the bands, they usually made their money off the album, but as record labels became more powerful, right, they were able to suppress what they paid to the artists. Then the artists started to rely on concerts in order to make their money. So it was really important that they had accurate information about how many people were coming and that the promoters were treating them squarely. So there became a market for third-party ticketing. And the original company that did this was one called Ticketron. And it developed kind of this electronic ticketing system where it could work with different venues and promoters, right, to get ticket allotments and to sell them. And it would be available to the artist, right? The artist would then have a third party that they could trust about, how the ticket sales were going. Ticketron had a competitor that emerged in the 1980s called Ticketmaster. And I don't know if you know this. Do you know who, like, the family that was kind of behind Ticketmaster originally, the one that provided the financing to get them off the ground, was the Pritzker family, the Hyatt Hotel. Yeah,
I've heard of them.
What's up?
I said I've heard of them.
Well, yeah.
J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, and Commerce Secretary Pritzker? How am I blanking on this?
I mean, it's like in the city of Chicago, the Pritzker family, like everything is named after the Pritzkers. It's a huge family.
Yeah, Penny Pritzker.
Penny.
She was
Penny.
She was Secretary of Commerce under Obama.
But anyway, so the Pritzker family was an initial investor in Ticketmaster, and Ticketmaster started to use, like, look, they were strong competitors in the market. Right? Because Ticketron was kind of old technology and they weren't really evolving with the time. And so Ticketmaster was innovative and going but they were relying upon exclusive contracts with venues, right? And that became the norm, was having these exclusive contracts. And so eventually they start eating Ticketron's lunch and pushing them out of the market. Ticketron went through a lot of troubles in the 1980s. But going about 1993, I can't remember the exact date, Ticketron was all but bankrupt and out of business, and Ticketmaster bought Ticketron. And at that time, like, everybody was like, "This is nuts! Like, this is nuts!"
As Mark Zuckerberg said, "Why compete when you can just buy your competition?"
That's exactly what it was. And look, there's a lot of specifics about that deal and why it happened the way it did that I don't want to get into. But suffice it to say, it was nuts to allow Ticketmaster to buy its its only competitor, really.
Wow.
Right. So then you have in the 1990s, like, Ticketmaster enjoying monopoly power
over third-party ticketing.
Yeah, and of course it was around that same time. It was right after DOJ. And by the way, one of the reasons this is important, I think, because it goes to show how antitrust enforcers are so short-sighted. And I hate to say it, but it's almost like, in the history from the 1980s on of antitrust enforcement, it seems like there is a desire to not see the reality, right? And to try to think of things in such myopic way that you can basically let the merger go through. And in that case, what it was they were like, well, there's really no problem here. There's really no problem because the customers of the ticketing agency are the venues. And the venues are all happy because Ticketmaster shared the revenue with the venues, right? And so the enforcers in the 1990s, this was under Bill Clinton's time. It might have been Bush 1, because I think it might have been 92, around there. But they basically say, hey, look, there's really no issue here because the venues are the customers. And so their welfare is increased by Ticketmaster's exclusive dealings, and this merger is going to be fine. No problem.
Possibly go wrong.
Yeah. And so it's like just completely disregarding the fans. Well, then Pearl Jam in 1993 started making a huge stink. And they did something that was beautiful, because they were basically like, we're done with Ticketmaster. And Ticketmaster.
What were they frustrated with, by the way? Like, what was getting them angry about Ticketmaster?
What was getting them angry was the fact that Ticketmaster took a lot of the revenue, right, from them, from the concert tickets, and they essentially controlled the venues, right? So it's like, you're Pearl Jam, you're coming into, I'll use Des Moines, right? And I don't think Wells Fargo Arena was, now it's not even, it's called Casey's Arena now. But it's like, it's the only venue in town, right?
Oh, okay.
Well, if a big, large arena,
Pearl Jam sized arena,
Pearl Jam size arena. And they just got, so frustrated that it was like they had to use Ticketmaster. They wanted to cut Ticketmaster out. So then they were like, we're going to organize a tour where we don't go to Ticketmaster venues. Right. And what it ended up being was they had to go to like outdoor venues, and there's all these problems with outdoor venues. And so they, like, their testimony before Congress, and I think it was 93, was such an important one, because they basically explained how, as bands, they had no choice but to deal with Ticketmaster. And they go, now at the same time, you remember the promoters that I told you about, those that worked with the bands to like do it. And you will appreciate this as somebody who has disliked the 1996 Telecommunications Act.
Not its biggest fan.
Not it's been me either, right? What that allowed to do was a guy named Ben Sillerman figured out that he could like roll up local radio stations. And because I remember how I mentioned how the radio stations were connected with the promoters, right? Because they had like relationships. He then started to roll up the promoters. And but it was the 1996 Telecommunications Act that essentially allowed SFX Entertainment, which stands for, it was Sillerman, and he was Ben FX Sillerman was his name. He died in, I think, 19, something like that. But anyway, he rolled up all of these radio stations and all these promoters and created SFX Entertainment, which is the predecessor to Live Nation, so that he was now controlling like all the marketing and promotion of national concert tours.
So you have Ticketmaster gobbling up its biggest competitor in Ticketron. You've got this guy Ben Sillerman, rolling up a bunch of radio stations and concert promoters into a basically mega promoter radio station conglomerate that eventually became Live Nation.
Yep. And it was acquired by Clear Channel. That fun. Yeah. Clear Channel bought up SFX Entertainment, and then they spun it off as Live Nation. Live Nation in 2010.
Is BlackRock or Blackstone about to come in and like buy that?
Probably. I haven't looked into it.
But go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, let's be honest. Wouldn't you, if you're an investor, want to be involved in this monopoly?
Oh, yeah. If I were a billionaire or centimillionaire, I would. My monopolies are great.
Monopolies are great for investors. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so 2010, DOJ allowed Live Nation to acquire Ticketmaster, allow one monopoly to acquire another monopoly. And now what you have done, and I want to just point this out to people, and any music fan out there will get this. The transaction, the product of live concerts is the artist is putting out music and the fan is consuming that music. That is the transaction. What Live Nation Ticketmaster represents is an entity that has put itself between that, like, and I want to call it magical, right? Art is magic. Like art, it touches us, it changes us. It is beautiful. It's not like, and it's not a substitutable product, right? Like your experience going to see Rage Against the Machine is,
never saw it. It would have been magical, Max.
You can't substitute.
Would have been etched into my brain forever. Yes,
I know. You can't substitute that experience by going to Arcade Fire,
Right.
As great as the Arcade Fire product might be, it's different. And so it's the artist basically has a monopoly over that like artistic product. But Live Nation and Ticketmaster have inserted themselves in to extract all the value out of that magical, sacred, artistic transaction that happens. And what if you had competition, if you had hundreds of promoters around the country, if you had, maybe 5, 6 ticketing agencies, if we prohibited exclusive contracting, right? This is something that I do not understand about antitrust law, is that we have fooled ourselves into believing that there is a consumer benefit that comes from exclusive dealings.
So
right?
let's take a step back, because I want to make sure that
Please.
folks who are listening who are not antitrust lawyers, or antitrust lawyers who I think effectively sued Live Nation Ticketmaster for Iowa when they were violating the promises, and you need to talk about what DOJ did in 2010. But let me take a step back and explain to me. So 2010, there's Live Nation, which has rolled up all these promoters, and it sounds like radio stations, and then there's Ticketmaster, which has gobbled up all the third-party ticketing services. They're merging, but don't they also somehow have control over the venues? Right? Because there's three. There's
that's Live. No. So Live Nation vertically integrated into venues.
And could you say what that means? What does that mean, vertically integrated into venues?
So first off, they buy and build venues.
Okay.
Right? So they actually have a portfolio of venues that Live Nation owns across the country. But then they also have exclusive dealings with venues. So even if the venue is not owned by Live Nation, like Live Nation Ticketmaster has exclusive contracts where it's like you will use live, because the reason that venues get kind of coerced into doing this.
Yes, say more.
Well, if you aren't under that exclusive contract, you're going to miss out on national tours. Right? So like
you don't get the artist if you don't enter in an exclusive deal with us. So, okay, I think I have the stack. You tell me if I have it right. There's Pearl Jam or Rage Against the Machine up here. There's me or you down here.
Nobody's going to come to hear us sing, Alvaro, though. The fact that you were in a band makes me think we should get a little
certainly not
together.
Hear me sing Rage Against the Machine against the string quartet of doom. So there's me or you down here. We hear about the concert thanks to the promotion of Live Nation, who manages this artist. We buy the ticket from Ticketmaster. We attend the performance in the venue either owned by Live Nation or in an exclusive deal with Live Nation, because Live Nation represents this artist.
Yes.
And so in between Pearl Jam or Rage Against the Machine, or Zach Brown Band or Kid Rock was testifying about this, and the people down here, there is just billionaire company after billionaire company that at some point were different entities, but all gobbled each other up in the 90s and then in 2010 to become one weird behemoth.
Right. And in 2010, some people correctly predicted that this was a problem.
Okay.
Right? That they predicted that allowing Live Nation to acquire. And DOJ's response to that was, look, the states were involved in it too, though, my understanding from lore is that the states really did not like the settlement, did not of allowing it to go through. I think there were a lot of states that would have preferred to actually challenge that merger and stop it. But you got to remember too, in 2010, this was the height of this Josh Wright group of people who are like, vertical integration is not an issue. It's not an issue for consumers when, because Live Nation is participating in a market over here. And look, I have no idea what Josh Wright's thoughts are on Live Nation Ticketmaster. I'm just saying that there was that, Chicago school
Borkian suspicion as he supports. But yes, go ahead.
He's probably on retainer with them.
Suspicion, yes.
But the idea being that economically speaking, consumers benefit from this vertical integration. And so but people could see it was a problem. So DOJ was like, okay, we're going to allow you to merge, but we're going to have these conditions, right? And one of the big conditions was that you cannot retaliate against venues for not, like, you can't, if they don't accept Ticketmaster as their exclusive ticketing agent, right? Like, you can't then use your control of concerts to like
Of
punish them.
artists. Got it.
Yeah. So this
Okay.
anti-retaliation provision of the 2010 DOJ, this is what is called in antitrust a behavioral remedy, right? It's like, we're going to allow the structure of the market to change, but we're going to prevent the harms of that structural change by putting little prohibitions on what they can do.
We're going to let you gobble each other up, but play nice. And we'll be watching to make sure you play nice.
Yes.
Okay.
So between 2010 and 2018, Live Nation was a habitual offender. A habitual
You don't
offender.
say, Max. I didn't see this coming. I didn't see it coming.
Just
what did they do?
Well, they violated the agreement over
How?
and over by retaliating.
Okay.
Right? They used, and this is where, like, I get disgusted with antitrust attorneys and economists who basically deny reality. Like, it's like, oh, well, they wouldn't do that. It wouldn't be in their economic interest to do that, so they won't do that. But of course they did it. It was the way that they got everybody to play ball with them. It was the way that they got everybody to buy into their monopoly. And I haven't even, like, it would take too long to get into like all the problems of like the artists too, because obviously artists hate Live Nation Ticketmaster as well. And so there's all these things that they're doing with them to force them into the Ticketmaster.
Because they're like, if you want to play the best, best venues, best arenas, you got to go with us because we control them.
Yeah. So anyway, this habitual violation led to an investigation by DOJ during the first Trump administration. And I can't get into the specifics of it, but all I can say is my opinion as an attorney is that there was enough evidence to hammer Live Nation Ticketmaster. I'm not sure if we could have gotten a structural unwinding of the deal, but I think that the behavior was enough that could have been asked for. Okay. And I know that I personally believe this was going to go to litigation in 2019, right?
What does that mean? So you were representing Iowa. You thought what would happen?
I thought that we were going to be suing Live Nation for violation of the consent order.
Okay. In the consent order was
settled.
The agreement.
Yeah. What?
Okay.
Yeah. DOJ entered into a settlement.
Yeah. In
surprised
2010.
The states were
in
left.
2019. Wow.
2019. This is like this to me. This watching how everything has unfolded. I'm like, it's just history repeating itself again. And not to get philosophical here, but this is the problem with power, right? Because when DOJ holds all the power of like enforcing an agreement, right? It has the ability for them to be corrupted, right? To have a sweetheart backroom deal that they get with the executives of Live Nation, to basically ram it down the state's throats, because the states do not have the same resources as DOJ has, right? And they kind of rely upon DOJ's like investigation and DOJ's evidence, right? So then if DOJ is like, we're done, we're settling this, states are left in a really bad position.
I was reading, colleague Pat Garofalo wrote that this go around in 2026, DOJ has, I don't even know what it is now, 40 lawyers on this, whereas across the entirety of all antitrust attorney general staffs, there are 300 lawyers. So
I'd say that's a really high, that's a high estimate. And it's like, and you have to remember, like, so I was one of two antitrust attorneys in the state of Iowa at this time, but we were, and
so the entirety of the state of Iowa,
was
represented by 2 assistant attorney generals for antitrust in these matters.
And there was so much going on at that time. One reason that I was like a backseat driver of that, state action in 2019 was because like we were getting the Google investigation ramped up. Facebook You know, these were like, there were all these attorneys in the states. We had the generic drug multi-state litigation, which I don't know if we've ever talked about on here before, but essentially the states had discovered that generic drug manufacturers were colluding with each other to raise the prices of generic drugs, right? And it was the states who discovered that and brought that case. So it's like all
Don't
of
tell
that
us.
time.
Don't take us down another horrific digression of terrible stuff. Let's focus on this one that
I
just
well, so
crushes our
anyway,
souls when we want to go to a nice concert. Yes.
so anyway, the settlement in 2019 it was a modification of the consent order,
Okay.
right?
From 2010.
From 2010. Or yeah, so it's 2019 settlement of the violations of the 2010 agreement was effectively a slap on the wrist to Live Nation. It was so funny at the time. I remember DOJ touting, it's like, there's going to be anti-retaliation provisions in this modification. And it's like, there were in the original, and they habitually violated it. So 2019, and can I point out something about that 2019 agreement that I find just despicable?
Yeah.
They didn't open it up to Tunney Act commentary.
What's the Tunney Act?
So the Tunney Act is a provision that Congress passed about the antitrust laws following Richard Nixon's corruption. Richard Nixon was making deals with his donors, ending antitrust investigations, ending antitrust actions against his donors. It was very corrupt dealing.
Never heard of this. That's never happened in our lifetimes, Max.
Yeah, it's like, well, this is, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So in 1976, Congress passed the Tunney Act amendments to the antitrust laws, which require that any settlement of an antitrust matter must be open to public comment, right? So you essentially give the public an opportunity to weigh in on the sufficiency of the settlement. And there's all these requirements on like DOJ and FTC, right? You have to do what's called a competitive impact statement. Like what you're doing is how it's going to affect competition in the market. So it's really a check on the government to make sure that the government is not corrupt.
So, go ahead. And I want to share something before we shift into the modern day, because I want to add some terrible brown flavor to the state of play in 2018. So I just sent you a link to a website from Reddit. It's from a comment 8 years ago. So that's 2018. That gives you a sense of how completely and utterly terrible things were. So I was poking around last night on Reddit, which always has some great, first person accounts of terrible things companies have done to people. And so this guy comes on, or lady comes on, and says, Ticketmaster is effing terrible. It is saying concert tickets are $94, but when I got the checkout, they are charging me $200 per ticket. So this guy wants to go see Sting. Tickets are $94, but it's a bucket list thing he always wanted to see. They get added to the cart as $94 plus fees per ticket. But when he gets to the checkout screen, the tickets are now magically advanced admission tickets that are $194 per ticket, $15.50 service fee, $4.75 order fee, because that's different from the service, plus shipping, because you cannot actually print them at home. The total is now, and they actually understated it, because the total is now $842.75 for 4 tickets that when you go to buy them are $94 per ticket, and fees, which should have been $376. So somehow almost $500 is getting added to the ticket. And to connect the dots, like Sting does not want, I don't know that man, right? I don't know him at all, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't want his fans to get stuck with $500 in junk fees when they just want to check off that bucket list item of like hearing Sting perform Every Breath You Take, right? Like, or whatever it is Sting performs nowadays, right? So Sting doesn't want that. But if Sting wants to access the biggest venues, he has to use Ticketmaster, right? Otherwise, he's not going to access the biggest venues. And so his fans are having a terrible issue. He hates it, surely, because he doesn't want to rip off his fans, right? And these guys are just getting fat in the middle. off of almost $500 in junk fees off of, this person and three of their buddies just trying to have a really good time. And so everyone is just locked into this, mess by Ticketmaster Live Nation. So, all right. So 2010, Obama DOJ.
Can I,
go ahead.
Yeah, can I just want to go back to what I said, which is what should make everybody so angry about this is that it's messing with something sacred, which is a fan and an artist connecting to each other and having an enjoyment of art. And so these talent, by the way, the guy, I think Rosen was his name, the guy that ran Ticketmaster through the 1980s and 90s. He was a lawyer. He was a failed comedian. Like he wanted to be a comedian like really bad, and then he kind of failed at it, so he became a lawyer instead. And I want to be clear that it's like these are talentless hacks that have inserted themselves in the middle of an artistic transaction, right? And it's greedy. They're business people who think that they are entitled to the proceeds of an artistic transaction.
So, and we have excellent, what are called hot docs. My favorite part of being an FTC commissioner is being able to look at hot docs. Right. These are incriminating documents that you access in the course of an investigation that will very much bring home the greed and the unethical conduct. But greed is the word for it. But Max, take us up to the present day.
And talentless hacks. That's the word for it.
I actually do think we'll see that too, unfortunately. So Max, 2010, Obama DOJ blesses Ticketmaster and Live Nation entering this unholy matrimony. 2019, Trump DOJ seems to kind of Bigfoot the states the way you're telling it, and blesses, the fact, some minor tweaks, despite the fact that it sounds like Live Nation has been repeatedly violating its promise not to retaliate against venues for not going with them. Bring us up to the present day, 2026. What happened in between, and what just happened this week?
So I was mentioning how DOJ argued that because it was a modification of the order, it was not subject to Tunney Act review, and I think that's legally wrong. I think it's absolutely, because it's essentially a settlement of new claims, and these are it's an antitrust investigation. So any modification is itself a settlement of claims, of antitrust claims, and should have been open up to Tunney Act. But guess what? Guess what? It wasn't allowed to be commented on by the public, and the public was furious, right? Remember, between 2019 and 2023, that's when we got the Swifties on board. The Swifties became anti-monopolists, and they started seeing, the increase in fees. They were starting to tune into this fact that, wait a second, why have we allowed all of these companies to be rolled up into one mega, corporation that sits between me and my favorite artist? And so there was a lot of public scrutiny of Live Nation Ticketmaster between 2019 and 2023. You had a change in administration. Obviously, Joe Biden was elected in 2020. We had Wu, Khan, and Cantor, who joined the federal government. Wu on the Economic Committee, Lena Khan at the FTC, and Jonathan Cantor at DOJ. So all of a sudden, you had a government that was willing to listen to consumers, willing to enforce the antitrust laws as they had been intended.
So
and that's why. And so essentially, DOJ reopened up the investigation. It's amazing how administrations are able to kind of screw up future enforcement, like through settlements, right, and release of claims. And that's why I think Tunney Act is so important, to expose corruption, because to me, no settlement that results from corruption should ever be considered valid by a court. If there is any kind of exchange of, hey, you give money to my campaign and I'm going to go easy on you, right? If you have that corruption going on, to me, that settlement is not enforceable, is not valid, and everything should be started up from the beginning. But in 2023, Jonathan Cantor at DOJ brought a monopolization and attempted monopolization claim against Live Nation with the stated intent to break them up. It was a beautiful development. And I'm very proud of being part of that administration where we were breathing new life into the antitrust laws. We were really looking at markets as they actually exist, not using, biased economic models to try to say that this conduct is actually good for consumers in the end. Because the people that can tell you whether or not something is in their interest and in their welfare, right, is the people that are actually experiencing that market, the consumers. And what I dislike about antitrust is it seems that the consumers are often not listened to, but that corporations are.
So what happened? So Assistant Attorney General Cantor with Doha Meki at his side sues Live Nation Ticketmaster for abusing its power, basically to monopolize these various industries that they effectively control. And I was looking at the amended complaint from DOJ, and the statistics are insane. It's like 80% of this market, 70% of this market, 60% of that market. So they sue, I think, December 2024. What happened since then, and what just happened this week?
Wasn't it 2023?
You're right. 2023. That's right.
They amended in 2024.
Yes.
That's what.
That's what I was.
So right before the election, I think they amended. And then in 2024, Donald Trump wins the election.
Okay.
You're fired. Lena has to.
I got fired.
You got fired, Alvaro. You got fired as a commissioner of the FTC. Jonathan Cantor has to step aside. But there was some hope at that point.
There was hope, right?
There was hope.
Yeah.
And a couple of things happened in Trump's early administration, right, that should have given us all hope.
Yeah.
He had an executive order that he issued that was about bringing the prices down in ticketing. I thought that executive order was interesting because it seemed less focused on competition and more. Basically, it's like the high prices of tickets are caused by scalpers.
Yeah.
Essentially, it was what the executive order seemed to be centered around. And, he's commanding DOJ and FTC to investigate and take care of it. Right. So there's the executive order that gives you hope. It's like, hey, people are pissed off enough about this market. Maybe we'll see some real change. Gail Slater was put in charge of DOJ. And look, I don't agree with Gail on a lot, right? But I do believe that she is intent upon enforcing the antitrust laws, right? We might have a disagreement about how far, we go to enforce the antitrust laws. But essentially, I believe that she cares about markets and making sure that the right decision is made. Last month, what was the date of Gail being kicked out?
I don't know. I'm not sure when it was.
We'll get to that because there's one other development that I think people should be aware of. So after that executive order, the FTC started investigating. And I think it was around last summer, maybe early fall of 2025, the FTC filed a couple of bots action. Now, let me explain what bots is. It's the Better Online Ticket Sales Act.
Yeah.
And it gives the FTC power to bring consumer protection claims against the ticketing companies and scalpers and others who basically abuse online ticketing to raise ticket prices. In that case, I'll just explain real briefly here. At the heart of it is that Ticketmaster has a limit on how many tickets an individual purchaser can buy from their system, right? What the scalpers do, and they're called brokers, right? Ticket brokers. What they do is they create multiple accounts. They buy up accounts of other people, and they do the limit, with each of those accounts. And then they aggregate those tickets together and then resell them on the Ticketmaster platform. So think about Ticketmaster here. They make money on the primary sale of the tickets to these brokers. Then they make money on the reselling of the ticket by the scalper, right, on their platform.
So they get a second bite at the apple that they profit off of each of those, the sale and resale.
They make more money off of selling to a reseller than selling to an individual consumer who's actually going to use those tickets.
Because they get a percent take, and the resale is obviously
and they get the
higher than the
fees,
sale.
the bot
And fees.
yeah. So the broker still has to pay the initial fees to Ticketmaster, and then they give them a percentage of the resale value too.
Oh.
So Ticketmaster had these policies about an individual buyer, what they could do, but they actively looked away about the fact that ticket brokers were aggregating all those ticket sales. So, and then not only did they do that, Alvaro, and this is why, like, I find corporations so disgusting, because they tell on themselves all the time that they do not care about law. They do not care about, any accountability. They created tools for the brokers to use to aggregate so essentially they were complicit in allowing the brokers to get around the sales limits. Because they had a financial incentive to do so. They make more money off of a resale than they do on a primary sale. So that case that bought, and it's two separate cases. One is against Live Nation Ticketmaster for their facilitation, and then the other one is against all of the different aggregators, the different brokers, right? So very encouraging. But I actually spoke at an ABA event about live ticketing, right, back in September. And I said at that point in time, my fear was that the FTC was bringing that action to give cover to the DOJ to settle and to end the monopolization case against Live Nation. One thing that should be pointed out, Alvaro, did Live Nation, I don't know, did they make any donations to this current
Max.
president?
They're all on the up and up. No, they didn't.
Live Nation gave $500,000 to Trump's inaugural committee, right? It's such a disgusting, like, why we even allow this to happen, right? That a president gets elected and then he basically can create a slush fund, which is like, hey, do you happen to have some matters before the government that you would like to see go away? Why don't you put a little money in my pocket over here in my inaugural committee, right?
Yeah.
And so we've seen it. Pepsi gave money to the inaugural committee. The FTC's complaint against Pepsi was dismissed, right? Here you had Live Nation give $500,000 to Donald Trump. Now the Live Nation suit has been settled.
And this also happened with Amazon, by the way. The FTC's lawsuit against Amazon. Amazon comes in, $1 million the inauguration, spends $70 million on the documentary from Amazon on the First Lady, Melania Trump. According to the New York Post, $29 million of that is going to go direct to the First Lady, and they spend another $30 million promoting it. Its FTC lawsuit is settled, and there is a financial penalty, there is a fine, but the three named executives get off with no demotion, no fines they have to pay, no monitoring, no firing, nothing. They get off scot-free. So this is a pattern, absolutely.
I think Trump wanted to settle Live Nation earlier, but he had a problem.
What's that?
Which was Gail Slater being in the position. I think there's a connection between last month, Gail Slater leaving DOJ, and then the settlement happening.
So I don't know if we know that. So there's fresh reporting from...
This is pure speculation by an educated observer.
Yeah, so there's two opposite signals. So one signal is that that Gail has since said that this is not a serious settlement. That's a comment she's given about the settlement. That said, there's reporting out this morning from Axios suggesting that Slater supported a settlement that did not include a breakup of Ticketmaster prior to her departure. And so there is some contrary reporting. I don't know if that's people leaking, to paint her in a certain light. I don't know what that is. I think the verdict is out on what her role was here.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
You're
now,
absolutely
Max?
right. We should always disclaim that, right? This is opinion. It is opinion based upon what we see happening. Yeah. But I made a tweet this past week about prima facie. I made a tweet. Whatever
you built
you call
that tweet.
Just gotta make that tweet. That to me, this is prima facie evidence of corruption, which is that the trial team was kept in the dark about the settlement.
Say how you know about that. Just paint the picture as to what happened this week.
Well, okay. So first off, just the bare facts for people who haven't been paying attention is that so last week it started to be rumored that there's a settlement for Live Nation, right? That they had actually, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was March 5th, like that they actually agreed to that the front office of DOJ and Live Nation had inked a settlement.
Yeah.
But we know for a fact that the lead trial counsel in this case, I'm sorry, I don't know if you have his name in front of you. I forget it off the top of my head.
I don't.
Yeah, the lead trial counsel for DOJ, the one that's actually litigating the monopolization case against Live Nation, was not involved in those settlement negotiations. And we know this because he represented to the court as much. The court on Monday morning was like, WTF, mate. I'm hearing there's a settlement and nobody, I just got it this morning, right? Why the heck hasn't anybody told me that settlement was a possibility? And he's going after the trial counsel, right? Because he's blaming trial counsel. You haven't done your duty to keep me informed of what's going on.
Yeah.
And trial counsel had to say, I didn't know. I wasn't involved. I didn't know. I think he said, I got it this morning, just like you, at the same time you did.
So let me just repeat what you just said. Days earlier, there had been negotiated some kind of settlement between the Department of Justice and Live Nation Ticketmaster. Days later, the lead lawyer for the Department of Justice is in court before a federal judge. The federal judge is pissed because just like last night, he'd been informed, hey, there's a settlement, reference to a term sheet. There's no term sheet attached to the email. That morning around 6:30, finally sets eyes on that thing, gets into court furious because he's like, why am I just learning about this now? There's a jury, there's a whole, everyone's time is wasted. You're disrespecting the court, he says in court that day. And the Department of Justice lawyer, the lawyer for the people of the United States of America, says, oh yeah, I just saw it this morning myself.
So
this is bananas. It's
bananas. And can I explain
bananas.
why?
Yeah.
Can I explain why it should be considered prima facie evidence of corruption?
Yeah, and then let's talk hot dogs.
I love hot dogs. Hot dogs. Sorry.
I also love hot dogs.
Yes. Nobody is better positioned to evaluate the claims than the lead trial counsel, right? To know how strong the case is and what is a settlement other than negotiation. And, look, Trump is the great negotiator, right? Like the art of the deal. You need to have the person in the room who best understands the strengths and the weaknesses of the case. And not to mention, they have a duty to keep the court apprised of settlement negotiations. So it's like it's an ethical duty, really, for the lead trial counsel to be involved in settlement negotiations. So you don't have what happened on Monday morning. So then you got to ask yourself, why would DOJ front office keep the lead trial counsel out of those negotiations, keep him in the dark? And the reason is simple, is because the settlement is not commensurate with the evidence. The settlement is weaker than the evidence and the claims, the strength of the claims would produce, right? If you actually did it. So I think there's clear intent here to slap Live Nation yet again on the wrist and to not actually fully litigate the evidence that is available to us. And we're going to get to the hot docs and start talking about some of this evidence that is just trickling out now, right? That we are starting to get evidence of what, what the case that DOJ had against Live Nation. But one other thing to point out here is that the states also have claims. And this is yet again the states being kept in the dark, being like ramrodded with a settlement here. And I hope I hope that there are states out there that are willing to put forward the resources and keep this going. But even if they don't, you, the people, you listeners, you have the ability to intervene in this matter, because this settlement will have to go through Tunney Act comments, and that is open to the public. And if we overwhelm the court with our experiences, with our desire to see this case be properly litigated, I don't know. I hope that would have a significant impact on what ends up happening here.
So let's talk about, so Max has been in the weeds here with this case for, he was sitting at the Iowa Attorney General's office looking at this case, or some version of it, in 2019. I'm a newcomer to this case, and a relative newcomer to this case. I loved looking at what are called the hot docs here. So what the heck is a hot doc? Basically, when you are litigating a case, you get just millions upon millions of documents. And it is usually a junior attorney's role to go in, look at those documents, and find incriminating stuff. And so the documents that have the most incriminating statements are called hot docs. And oftentimes they are text transcripts between senior executives. Those are the hottest docs usually. Oftentimes companies get wise to this stuff, by the way. And there's a big trend, for example, on Wall Street, where at a certain point, too many times they were caught red-handed texting each other ridiculous things. And so they would say, let's go live. Let's talk about this live. And they'd hop on the phone. And the reason this would protect them, because to intercept a live telephone call, you need effectively what's called a super warrant to do a wiretap intercept. That's pretty hard. It's you need to go to a judge.
And it wouldn't be available in a civil antitrust.
So it's a way to protect yourself against this. So what had been released are some of those hot docs. And so yesterday, my colleague Matt Stoller posted just an excerpt of these, where one executive.
Do you want me to share it, Alvaro?
Well, let me set it up. But yeah, you can start sharing it. Okay. So there's two executives from Live Nation Ticketmaster talking over the span of a couple of years, it looks like. And one of them, Ben Baker, says, and they're talking about parking, okay, and what they do to basically juice these fees for parking. So so you're in the document itself, on page 6 of the document, you're going to see the line that's gotten the most attention, where right under that little chart that says Premier Parking, further below there you go. It says, robbing them blind, baby. That's how we do. Okay. And so it's gotten a bunch of headlines that these executives are just bragging about robbing people blind. But what I want people to understand is how exactly they're robbing people blind. So if you go a little further up, go to the prior page, this guy, Baker, and by the way, the way this is formatted, I can't tell if it's Baker or Weinhold. So I'm just going to say one of these guys starts bragging, for parking fees alone, I did almost $200,000 more than 2019 with fewer shows.
I like how you corrected his grammar, because remember how I said these are talentless hacks? They also don't know proper grammar.
Oh, he said less shows. Yes, the savage. So this guy is bragging. And by the way, let's zoom into antitrust land. I don't like spending too much time in antitrust land with, because it can get a little bit esoteric, but
it's wonky.
They're putting less stuff out there, but somehow making more money off of it, right? They're decreasing output and yet profiting more.
Classic monopolist
BS, right? And so this guy's bragging, oh yeah, like I made $200,000 more on parking than we did 3 years ago, even though we have fewer shows. And then they start going into how they did it. And this is where I think it starts getting really gross. If you go to the next page, Max, at the top of the page, it says, I charge $50 to park in the grass, LMAO. I charge
just for context, for people, that means laughing my ass off.
Then he goes, I charge $60 for closer grass. And then this is the one that really drove me nuts. And I haven't seen too much coverage on this. $100 for oversize, which doesn't give you any benefits. There's no RV plugins, and you still have to walk 3/4 of a mile. What is this? What is this? Okay, this is for people who are super excited about seeing the show. This is for people who either have an RV or have rented an RV. They're going with their family. They're going with their friends to the show. They need an oversized parking spot. So they pay an extra $100, right, for that parking spot, or $100 or whatever it is. It's $100 for a parking spot. It has no power, no electricity, and they still have to walk 3/4 of a mile, okay, to walk to the venue. And these are the most dedicated fans. And what are these guys saying? Ha, 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 LOL.
Do you know what you call a transaction? Because he says that this is a transaction which doesn't give any benefits. Do you know what we call a transaction where money is exchanged for no benefit? That's called theft.
Yeah.
If you don't get the benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, obviously that's language that he's using, but it's absurd.
Here's the beauty of it. Go under that little spreadsheet that's starting to show. Zoom in on that, because this asshole was just bragging. I made 200K more, than we did in 2018 for fewer shows, and because he wants to get credit with his little buddy about it, posts the actual spreadsheet showing this to you. Okay. And here's the thing is that if I'd gone to that show and I'd stolen $20 out of your pocket, or I'd stolen your credit card out of your pocket, I'd be in jail. I'd probably be in prison. I haven't done a lot of things. I haven't committed many crimes. So, who knows what I would get, but I would make contact with the criminal law enforcement system. Right. And it would be on my record forever. I could get denied jobs for that kind of thing. But now, just because they're doing it by spreadsheet, all right, by just nickel and diming people. But no, I don't know what you call $50 and $100 screwing people over. I don't know what the expression for that is. They get a corporate pardon from Donald John Trump. That is what has just happened. Go ahead.
I want to point out a few things about this spreadsheet for the listeners who are listening on the podcast here. We have a little spreadsheet. It says Premier Parking. It gives the years 2018, 2019, and 2021. And then it gives the gross amounts, and then it shows the growth. And I just like to point out that, remember, in 2018 the first year, they're under antitrust scrutiny, right? The DOJ has an open investigation into them for violation of the 2010 consent order. They're under antitrust investigation. Early 2019, DOJ lets them off the hook. Releases claims. It's just fair game for them to start being a monopolist and extracting monopolist profits. And so that's why you see 2019 had a $28,000 growth from the previous year. And then by 2021, you're talking about a 33% increase in revenue. It goes up quite appropriately to $666,000 that they take from parking.
I love when the universe just is like, in case you don't get this.
Oh yeah, I noticed that number, and I noticed that
right?
number.
so go to page 10, because I want to point out two more things about just how gross this stuff is. So they continue in their little idiotic banter, and right at the top, it's page 10 of 14 in blue.
Okay.
And so one of these guys is bragging about how if you want to buy tickets in the morning, probably before you go to work, you have to pay extra. So one of the guys says, I think it's Ben Baker, the way I'm reading this. Yeah, that's the point. If you want to buy before 10 a.m., pay me. LOL. But Ben Baker's like, oh, that's Ben Baker. Then afterwards, Mr. Weinhold says, I gouge them on ancillary prices to make up for it, right? So they're just going back and forth about how they screw over people. And there's something else I want to point out, because there's going to be some people who listen to some of the stuff and they're like, well, you know, them's the breaks. This is a free market. And
we don't have to.
These people, not only don't this, these people are also just gross. Yeah. Okay, so I want you to go to page 11 of 14, and no one that I can tell has talked about this yet. Not only are they bragging about how they're ripping consumers off, they're also trash talking their colleagues because they think they got fat. Okay, so this, you know, at the top of that page, they start talking about someone named Haley. And one of them says, did that person eat Haley? Huh? The guy replies, Haley looks like she expanded during break. All right. So, like, in addition to just being scam artists, these guys are just bad people trash talking their colleagues. And then immediately after this, one of them says, I think it's Jeff, says, I literally told you I was leaving to go see my hot dentist. LOL. Okay. And if you keep on reading, they keep on going on about how their dentist is hot and how, hey, you missed it. I was going to go see my hot dentist. That's why I was gone. So these are the kinds of people that have been not nickel and diming you, adding an extra $50 or $100 to the tickets that you buy to go see your family, to go with your family to see an artist that you love. And it's made possible by the monopoly that various Department of Justices under Obama and that now twice under Trump have allowed to be built and maintained.
I have said this before. I stand by this, and I want people to come at me. Hey, you can call 920-WE-FIGHT if you want to yell at me for saying this. You don't become rich from being a good person. The people who become wealthy and extremely wealthy, I understand that there might be some people who are able to make a good living, living a moral, good life, and being a good person, right? But I'm not talking about even like up to a millionaire, right? But people who become extraordinarily wealthy, it takes a lack of morality. It takes a lack of good nature, right? And I am sick and tired of us holding rich people up on some kind of a pedestal as if they are like good for our society. Because I think we can see it time and time again when you start digging into the way that they really treat people, the way that they really interact with each other. It is no surprise that we get the Epstein class, right? People that take away the dignity of others in order to enrich themselves and in order to partake in just completely immoral activity. And so, look, I mean, it's a long way from these guys, you know, talking about their hot dentist, talking about robbing people blind, you know, to the crimes of Epstein, but it's on a continuum here. And it takes a certain type of person that pursues extreme wealth. And I'm sick and tired of acting like they're good people. We, the people, need to recognize that if you are that insatiable, that greedy, you should be condemned by the rest of us. We should always hold you with contempt because you do not deserve our praise and you certainly don't deserve our money.
I come at this a little different, Max, and let me explain how, because I think it's a different version of it, and I would submit it's more pernicious.
Okay.
I worry that if, you know, you say, oh, you have to be immoral to become this wealthy. I actually think it's more pernicious because I think what you need to be is indifferent. Yeah, I think you need to, and I think that a lot of people are not like these guys. right, are not like these guys that are trash talking their colleague at work, talking about their hot dentist. I'm confident those guys are married. I'm confident those guys are in relationships, and so I want to actually make it less about those guys, because actually I don't know if they're, who knows, but
if you know them, send them my way.
No, I don't want to get involved in their lives. I don't want no, I don't care about those guys. What I'm saying though is a lot of people are like, well, no, I'm a good person. I go to church on Sunday, or I give to X and Y and Z charity, but I got my little corner of, I got my, I sit on these charitable boards, but I got my corner of the market and I'm going to protect it. And I'm going to do X and Y and Z to protect the monopoly I run. I'm going to give to candidates when I know what I'm effectively doing is bribing them. But hey, the system allows it, so I'm not a bad person. I think that the way we have structured our system to promote these kinds of monopolies, to allow you to bribe an elected official effectively by donating to their inaugural, donating to their campaign, hiring the right lobbyists, we've created a system where it's very easy to look at yourself in the mirror and say, oh, I'm still a good person. When in reality, what you're doing is bilking working people of their ability to go to a Zach Brown Band concert, right? Like, I was actually looking up ZBB. ZBB keeps on coming up in the documents. That's Zach Brown Band. That's the music, that me and Seema like fell in love to, right? Because I had no idea about country music. And she's like, oh, I'm a big Zach Brown Band fan. Like, that is messed up.
That's really sweet, Alvaro.
And I was trying to pack my nerdy version of your punch, but which is, I think there is a banality to the wrongdoing here that we can't look past, because I think people like the ones in these text messages are actually the exception. I actually think that most of them are like, hey, I just like, hey, look at me, boss. Like, I added 10% to my revenue figures this much by configuring the aisle seats as preferred seating. And the boss is like, good job, Cindy. Cindy, this is going to be reflected in your annual review, right? Cindy goes home, gives to her local charity, right? And the boss goes home, feels good about it. When in reality, what's happening is they're maintaining a monopoly. And so, like, I don't want to rest on this person's evil, this person's bad. I want to focus on the root problem, which is we have these monopolies that Democrats and Republicans have allowed to be built and allowed to be maintained. And it's time to break them up. And so, one of the things I want to avoid is ending on an unhopeful note. You hit this great thing about we haven't mentioned the possibility of state attorneys general intervening. That for me is the future more than any Tunney Act thing. And I do think there's some hurdles in the Tunney Act that may make this kind of thing possible. And there's a bill, I think Senator Klobuchar is talking about amending the Tunney Act to make it better. But there was a bill dropped this week that a lot of people aren't paying attention to last week, which is a bill to break up the big meat packers.
Yeah.
And it was introduced by, kind of blowing my mind, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer in the Senate, someone who I have deep problems with because he egged on this administration in its attack on Iran, when the last thing people want is another foreign war. I think Democrats in general could be doing a lot more to fight this war. If you're an opposition party, the least you can do is oppose illegal Middle Eastern foreign wars. And yet, Senator Schumer has come out with a bill saying, break these guys up. And I'm the first in a long line of people who will come out and say, look, writing a bill isn't the thing you think it is. But the overarching message is the key message, which is that Democrats who you have not seen towing these lines, like Senator Sanders, Senator Warren, Senator Gallego, to their great credit, have been out there for some time saying, guys, we're going to break all you up. Good luck with that sweetheart merger deal. Good luck getting that corrupt merger through. We're going to come in and break them up. Now, Senator Chuck Schumer is out there towing this line, which sends a signal to all these other Democrats. This is normal for us now. We're going to legislatively break this up, which is far less expensive, far less time consuming to do than what the DOJ tried to do. And God bless Assistant Attorney General Jonathan Cantor. God bless his deputy, Doha Meki, for saying, forget what just happened. We're going to go in and we're going to try to break this thing up, guys, right? But that is much harder than Congress saying we're going to legislatively command this breakup. And so in this morass, go ahead.
Well, can we just talk about, because I can already hear, the people that you and I interacted with on a daily basis, right? Being like, that's such a violation of the property rights and these, corporations.
Honestly, yeah.
What everybody has to remember is that corporations exist by the permission of the government. A corporation cannot exist without the government saying, okay, you can exist. And so when we start thinking about the power that we, the people, have, the legislative power is our power. And we can actually change. We can change how we give our permission to corporations to exist.
Yeah. Amen. So, folks, what can you do? You can push your attorney general to intervene and stop the suit. And one thing we haven't discussed is the state attorneys general hired a big gun. Jordan Kessler, I believe is his name.
Jeff,
I have no idea.
I hate that.
Mr. Kessler has been hired. He is has a reputation for being a firebrand attorney. The states have very loudly said, we don't agree with what DOJ has said. God bless them.
They were kept in the dark. How can you really agree with it when you didn't have a seat at the table?
Yes. So praise them online. Go to social media. Thank them for what they're doing. Yeah. Call for there to be breakups after the fact of these things.
Yeah.
Stay online about how unhappy you are with Ticketmaster and Live Nation with what they're doing. And if you get any chance you get to comment on this online on a docket, use that opportunity. Contact your state attorney general. If you're a venue owner, if you're an artist who's been screwed, offer to provide testimony. Because remember, they're operating with far fewer resources than the federal government. So jump in there. Because one thing I found, Max, is when you look online, there's a lot of consumer testimony about how much it sucks to deal with Live Nation Ticketmaster. But there's very little testimony from venue owners and artists. Why? Because they're scared. One last note that I will add here that we've been remiss in raising is that when we were at FTC together with Chair Khan, we passed a rule that is still in place today that says you can't do the thing that we described in 2018 where you float a $94 ticket in front of you and then hit him with the $194 ticket plus fees after the fact. That is thanks to a rule that we enacted before we left that remains in place today. Our Republican colleagues at the time supported it. It remains in place today. So not only can you push your state attorneys general to try to stop this thing, you can do that today, right now. Tag them online, say, hey, saw you were against this, love it. You go, my friend, right? You can tell your elected officials, you gotta break up all these companies after the fact. I don't care that they consummated these mergers during this time. But then lastly, you can push your state regulators. You could push your federal regulators, but maybe right now it's state regulators to pass rules against some of the most abusive conduct you see. Because remember, these venues are concrete, brick and mortar venues. I think a state has every right to come in and protect people against some of the more abusive things that Live Nation Ticketmaster are doing at the state level, like we did at the FTC at the federal level when we were in charge. So there's any number of things people can do to try to stop this. We urge you to take action. Tag at the Fair Fight Pod. When you do, we'll try to amplify both from our growing account online, but also our personal accounts, which have a few more followers. And on this note, Max, if I can tell folks, if you like what you're hearing, follow us on X at the Fair Fight Pod on X. We're also at the same handle at Blue Sky. I believe we're at the same handle on YouTube. If you subscribe to us,
it is at the Fair Fight. It is
at the Fair Fight
at YouTube.
On YouTube.
I can't believe that we got that handle at YouTube.
Amen.
But we did.
You can subscribe to us there. Every subscriber counts. I think last I checked on YouTube, we were at, 130 subscribers. Would love to get that to 200 as soon as we can. And anytime you can call us at 920-WE-FIGHT or write us at ask@thefairfightpod.com with your questions about the economy, things you want us to cover next in one of the recorded episodes we are doing or one of the lives. We read all of that, and we'd love to do and act on some of those ideas that we're getting.
And just to note, we are trying now to do these on every Friday morning. We're not going to be doing it next Friday morning. Both Alvaro and I have other commitments, so be 2 weeks before we're back again. But thank you, everyone, for listening to The Fair Fight. As Alvaro said, we'd love to hear from you. I man that phone number, 920-933-4448. I want to hear from you. Give us a call. Let us know your thoughts. Ask us your questions, and we'll be happy to address it on an upcoming episode. So thank you, everyone, for watching. And with that, Alvaro, keep on fighting for fairness.